Philip Spark. The second band that's going to come onto the stage now in a few moments' time is Forrester's Brass 2000. We heard them in the first section a little earlier on, and they're going to be conducted by John Davis. Their programme starts with Ride by Samuel Hazel, followed by Georgia on My Mind with the trombone solo by Rob Wilshaw, the second movement from Partita, Philip Spark's test piece, and then the finale from Glorifico Aeternum by Dean Jones. So they're coming up a little bit later. But before we go back to the hall, thankfully we are joined by David Charles, who's the adjudicator of the first section competition here at the Bolsover Festival of Brass. So we're going to just ask him a few questions about the general standard and what stood out for him for the winners. So that was my first question there. What was the general standard and what stood out for the winners?
Well, the general standard was reasonably impressive. If I'm really honest, I'd like to have heard a bit more adventure in the repertoire chosen. A lot of it was music that we've all been around for a long time. Not to say it's not good, because between the bands I got to listen to you three with your wise comments and talking about the great Howard Snell arrangements and such like. Yeah. So there's nothing wrong with playing those, absolutely nothing wrong at all. But it would be nice to hear a few more new pieces. In terms of the winners, what stood out for me was they just looked like they're enjoying themselves, and that really makes a big difference in an open adjudication. They came on and they did Monozel-inspired Blue, which is always difficult to follow in their footsteps. But they put their own mark on it, and they did a really, really good job. And from beginning to end, they were having fun. And as an adjudicator, it was one of the few bands where I was sat back really enjoying the show.
Is it something that you say that the band has got to project that it's actually enjoying playing the music? They can play it very well, but if they're all there with glum faces, it doesn't do anything for the audience. It doesn't engage the audience either.
Well, it is an entertainment competition, you haven't got to do any of that if it's closed adjudication. But if you're in the game of being in an entertainment contest, you've got to go out there and entertain, and that starts from when you walk through the door to when you leave the stage. And also the presentation. What was interesting today was, unlike Brass in Concert, which we're all familiar with, where you have a fantastic compere from start to finish throughout the day, each band was presenting their own performance, each conductor. It was a big deal for some of them. You could tell that they're talking to the audience with a live online audience of so many thousand. All of a sudden it needs careful consideration, and some bands presented their performance better than others. Nothing to do with the playing, just the general performance.
I was going to ask you, Chris, it was something we've been talking about ambition, but also trying to expand musical boundaries. So what David is saying is there's the opportunity now for those bands to just seek something a little bit different.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say more modern, but possibly in different genres.
Yeah, I mean, we were saying earlier, I just sense actually that there were fewer new arrangements this year than there were last year. I think we saw a little bit of I think we saw more new repertoire last year. This year we seem to have just taken a step backwards, and as we were saying earlier, Steve, really, and it's you can always find those quality arrangements, the Howard Snell, and we talked about Elgar Howarth, or Gottlieb, however we want to call him. But then, there are also arrangements in there which, to be fair, are sounding dated. I mean, I think you mentioned Ray Woodfield, Steve. I mean, nothing wrong with Ray Woodfield.
In his day,
he was
the Frank Bernards of his day.
They are sounding a little bit jaded. And yet you can look at also arrangers like Gordon Langford, who's a consummate arranger.
And those pieces though, that you can get away with them if you play them really well.
Yeah.
And at the level we're at today, that sometimes they're highlighted as being a little dated. You put a really one of your top 3 or 4 bands on it, and people be blown away as always, because it's quality music a lot of the time, these arrangements. But I appreciate also that it's difficult to commission music. It's expensive for bands to commission new arrangements. You might commission something and you get your programme back. It's not exactly what you were hoping for, but if you've committed to it, you've got to do it. So at this level, it's not a big criticism. I think they're all doing their best, and they're picking pieces that they think will work, and on the whole they did. But for my own personal taste, it would have been nice to have a little bit something with a bit more edge.
Yeah, so it's about the balance as well, isn't it? The balance in the programme from that point of view.
The point we were talking about is where the innovation comes from. Does it come from the band? Does it come from the conductor? I'm not sure, each band has its own structure where this new blood, this new feeling comes from, and it's something every band has to work out for itself.
It's about staying in touch with what's going on in the rest of the musical world as well, and the rest of the banding world. You know, you've got to speak about Cirrus earlier. You go to Cirrus, there'll be 15 new pieces of music get played there every year across the various sections, maybe even more than that. You know, it's not too much to expect that some of them might find their way over here pretty soon. You know.
Yeah.
So, but overall, David, you enjoyed it, and they said there's plenty of stuff for the bands to work on.
Oh yeah, I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and there wasn't a show that I didn't take something from. I think one of the things that maybe the conductors could consider in a contest environment is to pick pieces that show off your strengths a bit more. It is own choice, so you can pick whatever you want, so it doesn't make a lot of sense to pick something that highlights a weakness.
With that, we go back to the hall for the second band with Simone.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you've just joined us here today, we're on band